Hi guys, this is a very impromptu video. I only decided to film this yesterday. As you will probably know, even though it's not the focus of this channel, I am a huge musical theatre fan, and Hamilton was put on Disney Plus as of last weekend. I think Hamilton being put on Disney Plus is absolutely brilliant because it largely removes two of the biggest access barriers to theatre, which are financial barriers and geographical barriers. So how expensive a ticket is and the fact that if it's not on in your city, you can't go and see it. And this is something that I hope is rolled out to many more musicals as time goes on, but I'm so excited to be able to watch Hamilton whenever I like from the comfort of my living room. And I also do that a lot with Newsies, which is also on Disney Plus. So if you did enjoy Hamilton and you're on a bit of a musical theatre bandwagon at the moment and you haven't seen Newsies, I would really recommend watching that too. There are 20,520 words in Hamilton and they move at an average speed of like 140 words per minute. So it's definitely very easy to miss stuff on your first viewing, or to be honest, on any viewing. I notice something different every single time I watch it. And there is so much to unwrap here, firstly because of the show's basis in history, so we've got all of the historical accuracy to look at, but also in the fact that Lin-Manuel Miranda's writing in terms of the music and the lyrics is just incredible, and there are so many layers. I'm a big nerd when it comes to this kind of stuff, so I thought I would kind of combine everything together and make this video of 8 things you might not know about Hamilton. You might know them, which is why I put that word might in the title, but I think this is like a good starting point for people who have maybe just seen the musical or who would like to look into it a little bit further. Here's just a few points to kind of whet your appetite, as it were. Obviously, it kind of goes without saying, there are going to be spoilers in this video, so if you haven't watched Hamilton yet and you do intend to, I would really recommend watching that first. That's your warning. I will hear nothing about spoilers from here on out. Sorry, actually just quickly before we start, I just want to say a really big thank you for 7,000 subscribers. That's so many people. If you are new to my channel and you're not already subscribed, I would love it if you would stick around and subscribe. And also, as I have said, this video is really different to anything that I normally post, so do give it a thumbs up if you enjoy it, to let me know that I should make more of this kind of thing. I really do look at those numbers, it really does help me. And lastly, I'm not an expert. This is just research that I have done and have pulled from various different sources and some little pieces of information I found that I like. So if any of this is incorrect, do feel free to correct me in the comments. Likewise, if you have any more interesting facts about Hamilton or anything interesting in Hamilton that you've noticed, or if you just want to talk about how amazing Hamilton is, then feel free to do that in the comments. I would love to see what you guys have to say. So without further ado, let's get on with the list. So number 1 is just a small historical accuracy to start us off. There are a lot of children missing. In the song Take a Break in Act 2, Philip says he is 9, and he also says, I have a sister but I want a little brother. Obviously we as the audience don't meet the sister that he's talking about, but in reality Philip Hamilton actually already had 3 siblings by the time he was 9 years old. He had one sister whose name was Angelica, and he also had 2 brothers, Alexander Jr. and James Alexander. And in total, Alexander Hamilton and Eliza Hamilton actually had 8 children, even though in the musical, when we see Alexander die, it does seem like they only had 2 and we've only met 1. We're also led to believe that the Schuyler sisters are a family of 3 siblings, 3 girls, but in reality, Philip Schuyler and his wife actually had 15 children, quite a few of which were boys. And that's actually likely to change the story quite a bit, because Angelica obviously cites her main reason for not being able to be with Hamilton despite being attracted to him in the first place is because she is the oldest woman in a family full of girls, and so it's her duty to marry well because she doesn't have any brothers. But that's just not true. Plus, Angelica was actually already married when she met Hamilton. There are a whole load of discrepancies there, far too many to unpack in a video that I'm trying to keep quite short. Although the similarities that you see between Angelica and Alexander Hamilton have been corroborated by their letters, so I think certain parts of her character have been kept the same, whereas actually a lot of her timeline has been shifted quite a lot. Point number 2, to me, and I'm sure to many others, there is quite a noticeable absence of slavery and very few mentions of slavery given the true events of the time this musical was set. It is acknowledged here and there, but the musical does receive a fair bit of criticism for portraying Hamilton in a very positive light when the reality was likely to be very different in regards to slavery. Christopher Jackson has spoken publicly about the conflict that he felt playing George Washington, who perpetuated slavery but whose character makes no mention of it in the musical. When Eliza Hamilton sings about her life after her husband's death, and specifically when she sings the line about speaking out against slavery, there has been a directorial decision for the actor playing George Washington to hang his head in shame and step out of the spotlight to acknowledge that character's blame. On a related note, for number 3, I wanted to discuss the decision making behind the racially diverse casting, which I've seen quite a few people discussing, and I think it definitely is interesting considering the fact that pretty much all of the characters being represented would have been white in real life. When the show was being cast for the West End, the director Thomas Kail spoke about this, and he said, "We are very conscious of what we are doing here. This is not colourblind casting." So in addition to that, they do also seem to specifically seek out newcomers to play these roles rather than sort of leaning back on more established actors, with a fair few exceptions in the Broadway cast, but I'm talking about the more recent castings. Hamilton is a musical about a man who beat the odds and fought for a world that he wanted to live in, and so that message is reflected within their casting decisions. Point number 4, Hamilton is full of parallels, and this is something that I'm continuing to notice, and I literally notice a new one, if not more, every single time I watch it. It's so clever. So let's start off with the most obvious one. Hamilton repeatedly sings or raps, "I'm not throwing away my shot," and then he is killed because he throws away his shot, he doesn't shoot. Similarly, Aaron Burr sings "Wait for it" because he's a very cautious man, and this is also reflected in the staging. Aaron Burr only ever walks in straight lines, which I think is really cool because that's how he thinks, whereas Hamilton is more likely to walk in a curve because he finds a way around a problem. But anyway, that's not the point that I'm making. But Aaron Burr sings "Wait for it" again to show that he is very cautious, but in the end of the musical he doesn't wait for long enough and he shoots Hamilton. Another detail that I love is the fact that the love triangle between Alexander, Angelica and Eliza is written in a way that does highlight to you the fact that Alexander and Angelica are more similar, and that's really clearly laid out in Angelica singing "He will never be satisfied, I will never be satisfied" versus Eliza's "That would be enough." And there are countless other parallels within the show. Think about it next time you watch it. It blows my mind. It's so good. I love it. For point number 5, I wanted to talk a little bit about the set. So the set for Hamilton is made up of wooden scaffold-like structures and half-built walls, and those are supposed to represent America being built. And then in the interval, they actually add 8 foot of fake brick onto that back half-built wall to show the passage of time being further along in that process. And in the set they also wanted to give a nod to all of the immigrants that came in from elsewhere by boat to help build the country. So they've added nautical elements like ropes and pulleys as, yeah, a nod to those immigrants. As we know from the song Non-Stop, which is probably my favourite song in Hamilton, I think, maybe, today it is, and also from the rest of the musical, Alexander Hamilton wrote a lot. So when you pair that with the fact that writing was pretty much the only form of long distance communication at the time, there is a real wealth of material that Lin-Manuel Miranda could refer to when writing this musical. It is actually based on a book as well, but that's a whole other thing. And there are actually a lot of references to real letters and pamphlets and written documents embedded within the lyrics, so I'm going to give you some examples. In the song Helpless, Angelica sings, "I'm just saying if you really love me you would share him." And in a letter from Angelica to Eliza, which was written in 1794, she wrote, "I love him very much, and if you were as generous as the old Romans you would lend him to me for a while." Another example of this, which I think is really sad, is that in the musical the last line that Alexander sings directly to Eliza is "best of wives and best of women," and that was actually one of the last lines in the letter that he wrote to his wife to be delivered upon his death. So that is a direct quote from his last letter to her. On to point number 7. Burn is a song about Eliza's hurt when she finds out, first of all, that her husband cheated on her, but second of all, that he thought it was appropriate to publish it in print. She sings about burning her husband's letters to erase herself from the narrative, but in reality, we just have no idea how she reacted to this. There is no record of it. The case of her actually burning anything we can leave down to creative license, but I do quite like the idea of her choosing to remove herself from the story, even though the far more likely reason is just that there is much less record of women's lives than men's lives at that time. There is very little surviving evidence of Eliza Hamilton's letters, which leads historians to believe that she either destroyed them herself at some point between her husband's death and her own. She actually lived on to be 97, so she lived for a really, really long time. Or one of her children might have destroyed them, or they've just been lost and they're sat in an attic somewhere, lost to the world for the moment. And for the last point, point number 8, I've seen a lot of people theorising about the ending and that gasp at the ending from Eliza. I am not a huge fan of the gasp, but I know that a lot of people are, so I just thought that I would touch on it. There are a couple of theories about that direction. The first being that Eliza has died and she is gasping upon seeing Hamilton again or seeing heaven. And the other theory is that there's a point where Lin-Manuel Miranda steps out of character as Alexander Hamilton and becomes himself. He takes her hand, he walks her to the front of the stage, she looks out into the audience and she gasps when she sees her legacy and the world as it is today. Apparently the earlier versions of Hamilton didn't include the gasp, but did still include Lin-Manuel Miranda taking her hand and leading her to the front of the stage and looking at the audience, which makes me more inclined to go with the second theory, the one about the breaking of the fourth wall. I think I like that theory more, but one of the coolest things about theatre is how it's all open to interpretation anyway, so you can go with whichever version you prefer. So anyway, that is the end of my list. I think it is really important to remember when watching a show like this that Hamilton is a work of historical fiction. It is based in history, but ultimately it is just a story, which is why I don't tend to get too het up over the historical inaccuracies. And I just think Lin-Manuel Miranda is an absolute genius and I love it. I love it so much. I don't know if I've mentioned that I love it. So I hope that you enjoyed this list and I hope that it made you think about something you might not have thought about before. I would really encourage you to go and do some more research if you are interested, because there are so many layers surrounding this musical. Obviously every character in the musical is a real historical figure as well, so you could just research forever. As I said at the beginning, if you do know any cool Hamilton facts or things that you particularly liked about Hamilton or something that you noticed, then you can also leave those in the comments. I would love to read them. Please do give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it so that I know to make more stuff like this. Subscribe if you haven't already and stick around. I would love to have you. Thank you very much for watching. Now you can go and watch Hamilton again. Bye!